All right. Hi, Maria. Maria and I have been following each other for quite some time now, so I feel like I know her really well.
Hi, I know. And you're one of those people on Instagram that I'm like, I would genuinely be friends with them. Why don't we live in the same place?
I know. That's the thing about this business is that like none of my like in real life friends, like I don't even think really get what I do still. But then everybody like you and the community that we have on Instagram, I feel like they really get me. And I'm like, why don't you live closer? Maybe we should do like a retreat. We should do retreats.
Wait, yes, that's a great idea.
We should talk.
Yes, I would love that.
Oh my God, so would I. So I feel like I asked this question of everybody first, just because I think it really gets down to the crux of, the journey is what was your relationship like to food and your body and weight growing up?
I think I always had some level of body dysmorphia. I remember from a real young age just not being comfortable in my body. And that was probably directly influenced by, like most of us, like my mom was dieting, her mom was dieting. So I was pretty much just born and bred in diet culture. And I don't blame my mom or my grandma for that. It's just the society, the culture that we grew up in. But I definitely absorbed a lot of that from a young age. I was the only girl in a household full of boys. I have three brothers. So I don't know exactly how that might have played into my relationship with food and my body, maybe influenced it positively in some ways, maybe negatively in others. But I know my sort of disordered eating and tumultuous relationship with food and my body goes back to childhood for sure.
Sure. And I think that's like a lot of people's experience, like generational messaging that's brought down. And again, we can't really blame them because that's what they were grown up into. We can't even blame ourselves for the same reasons.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, it's tough. So your journey is actually really similar to mine in terms of the particular eating disorders that you experienced, and you can speak to what those are, and how we both kind of healed by finding health at every size and intuitive eating. Did you find that you didn't have your eating disorders all at once? Did they show up at like different stages of your recovery? How did that work for you?
That's a good question. Yeah, because a lot of times one will sort of lead into the next or cause the next. So that's what it was for me in my case. I started with some pretty restrictive eating that turned into, I guess, what we would call orthorexia. So an unhealthy obsession with clean eating. And that was really exacerbated by working in the fitness industry. I mean, you know what the fitness climate is like. There's a lot of pressure to be thin and to have visible muscles and toning, quote unquote. So that pressure really got to me and it influenced the way I was eating. And I was really rigid, tracking in my fitness pal. And that, a lot of time, well, we can talk about this more if you want, but orthorexia is typically a for binge eating disorder because the restriction inherent in something like orthorexia, anorexia, I mean, oftentimes just that's so unsustainable. It's such an unsustainable way of relating to food that you go to the other extreme. You just go to the other end of the spectrum. So then I ended up developing later on binge eating disorder. And then by the grace of God, found health at every size and intuitive eating, which is so integral in my healing. But yeah, it was like one eating disorder, disordered eating pattern to the next. And then finally, I got my hands on this information.
Yeah, I feel like that's similar to my journey. Like I said, it was, in the beginning, it was like my goal was to eat as least calories as possible. And then I realized that, no, you do need to fuel your body to get the aesthetic that I was looking for, but then it became orthorexia. And as you said, inherent in orthorexia and that type of restriction is restricting and binging.
Yeah.
It goes into that. So yeah, there's like these phases sometimes that you can slip into and out of. It's so fascinating.
Yeah.
How were you first introduced to intuitive eating and health at every size? Was it Instagram? Was it podcasts? Did you read something?
One of my best friends, I want to say back in 2015 or 2016, encouraged me to read, I believe it was Caroline Dooner's book. And she kind of had some insight, my best friend did, into intuitive eating and was encouraging me to look into it. And so I got my hands on a couple different books, and it was sort of a slow process for me to integrate intuitive eating. I don't think I immediately understood it. Perhaps if I had started with the original intuitive eating book, I would have been able to sort of move in that direction sooner. But I read, I it was great for me to read things like Body Kindness by Rebecca Scritchfield, Caroline Dudner's book, started listening to Christy Harrison. And that was it really, really opened my eyes, but it is such a paradigm shift that I think it just took me a couple years to fully get it.
Yeah, because unlike another diet, intuitive eating is there's a movement component, there is a diet or food component, but it's largely a mental component that takes so much more energy and things to work through that a diet doesn't have. So it can be harder in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, the mental work is the work that a lot of people, I think, have resistance to, because it doesn't feel like a quick fix.
No, it's not, and it's not sexy. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's not what a diet could promise you or appears to promise you, as we know, but it's a different type of deeper work that is slow and not linear and not as sexy.
Yes, great point. It's much harder to market.
It's so true. It's so true. Yeah, I honestly, when I first started my business, I didn't label myself as an intuitive eating coach because I didn't feel like I followed intuitive eating, because I was like, well, I don't believe that, like you can just, eat pizza and ice cream and it's going to be okay. And I didn't have that gentle nutrition part of it. Like, I didn't read the whole book yet. So like I did, and then I read it and I understood and I heard like, the Body Love Society, How to Love Your Body podcast. And they would like work through that. It's not just all about eating pizza and ice cream and play food or junk food or whatever. And once I understood that piece, I was like, oh no, this is good. This is very good. Everybody needs this. So, that's how I kind of refined, what my niche was and what my philosophy was, is I fully understood it. And I think a lot of people are stuck in that, not fully understanding it. So not wanting to jump on board.
Yeah. And also not knowing that it's grounded in science and it's evidence-based.
Yes. Well, now that I'm going through the training, there are a lot of studies I've been reading. There's a lot of pages.
Yeah, there's a ton of research.
It's so true. And it like blows my mind that this research isn't, well known. And I have people on Instagram who are like, well, if you just Google, it says that, obesity causes XYZ. And I'm like, do you know how much like crap is on the internet? Like, are you aware of what news literacy is and like looking at scientific studies?
I know. I agree with you. There's so much noise to sift through though.
It is. It's a lot. And I can't even blame people, because they're seeing that on the internet all the time. And the more you see it, the more you believe it. And also there's like confirmation bias if you're going to lean toward the things that you already believe anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's much harder to adopt a totally new perspective. Even when you see the research and the science, you're going to have that level of skepticism because it's counter culture.
Yeah. Now, a lot of my clients, and I'm sure your clients too, binge eating is a huge part of this. I think that's a very common issue to have if you're a long-term dieter. So can you talk a little bit about the most common causes of binge eating?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you said something earlier, Alana, that interested me too, where binge eating, like the restricted binge cycle, is almost like built into things like orthorexia or clean eating, because they have these cheat days or like cheat weekends or cheat meals, which is just essentially like binging. And it's a break from the otherwise really restrictive way that you're eating. Restriction is like one of the, if not the number one predictor of what is going to cause binge eating. And binge eating is not, I think a lot of people think that it's like somebody who just can't control themselves around food because they don't have enough willpower, or they're addicted to food, or they don't have enough self-control. I know it was game-changing for me was to find out, thanks to people like Evelyn Tribbley and Elise Rush, who put this information in their book. And binge eating is just a natural compensatory response to starvation or to deprivation. It's just your body trying to get its needs met. It's your body making up for the lack that was inherent in the restriction before. So is one thing that I really try to help my clients see is like, this isn't your fault and you don't need to feel shame around this. Most people who are restricting are going to end up binging. And it's just, again, like your body is trying to keep you alive. It's wired for survival. It's trying to get its needs met. So like, it's actually kind of a good thing. Like it's a smart strategy on the from a survival standpoint. It's not necessarily like sustainable or adaptive, like long term, but if you can see that still your body's on your team, your body's working for you and really just trying to help you get your needs met, binge eating isn't something that you need to feel shame for, and it is fixable.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such an evil genius strategy on behalf of the diet industry to be like, all right, let's play on people's insecurities and their shame to make them act this way.
Yeah, it makes me sick.
It's awful. I was just on a call with a girl who's going to join me for group coaching this summer, and we were talking about like Weight Watchers and how, if you didn't lose your 2 pounds this week and what happened there, and it's like this like shame of you should have and why didn't you, and it's just and it keeps you coming back because you're like, oh well, there's something wrong with me. Teach me how to do it right. Diet culture.
Yeah, it's the ultimate gaslighter. I mean,
Yes.
like they're like, it's your fault that you can't stick to this plan or program. It's your fault that you're not losing the weight. When actually, like, diets biologically don't work or make sense long term. And it's not just the individual's fault. It's like a broken system. It's a broken product. I have to do a lot of, I encourage my clients to also be in therapy as they're going through my program, but we do, whatever we can within my scope of practice to unpack the trauma that's associated with things like weighing yourself in front of people every week and in programs like Weight Watchers. A lot of my clients have, similar to yours, histories of chronic dieting. They were in Overeaters Anonymous, even, non-consensual dieting. Their parents put them on diets at a young age. Like there's a lot to process there, and them coming to us, this might be the first time they're ever like really processing things like that. So I think we have a responsibility as practitioners to create a really safe and compassionate space. I know that is one thing that holds people back from getting help, is they think they're going to be judged, which makes me so sad. Like they really think that they're going to be shamed or judged by practitioners. And it's like, I think we have a duty to make our space as safe for them as possible, so they don't feel like they can't be honest with us.
Absolutely. And something you just said, I think I really want to unpack for the listeners, is that those are traumas. Like there's a difference between what I call a big T and a little t trauma. Like people are like, oh, I didn't go through trauma. I wasn't sexually abused or like watched someone die in front of me. And I'm like, well, that's a big T trauma, but there's little t traumas of being put on a diet when you're a small child, or being criticized for eating something as a kid, or being weighed in front of other people. That can be a trauma. Anything that produces negative emotion and negative behaviors down the line, that's a trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, being weighed in front of people, I mean, that can feel so violating. And I was emailing a client yesterday about how, diets telling you when you're allowed to eat, what you're allowed to eat. Not only is that like super militant, but it's like also kind of abusive. And I think that trauma is that's the correct word for it, especially, I mean, when you think about not just the psychological trauma, but dieting is a nutritional trauma. Like your body is suffering from a nutritional trauma. So to recover from that, that's why we see binge eating. It's like your body is recovering from a nutritional trauma. It's no small thing.
Right. And there's that fear around, not restricting after a binge. People fear that when they actually start fueling their body correctly, that they're going to gain all this weight. And it's like, well, you might need that. Like we need to start unpacking why you're putting so much emphasis of your worth on your weight in the first place.
For sure. And we also have a lot of misinformation about how bodies actually work. Like I think there's a lot of fear around the weight gain and just not understanding actually factors into weight gain, weight loss, weight regulation. The way diet culture teaches it is by and large, it's misinformed.
Right, absolutely. And I mean, this is a long-term process. This isn't the quick fix of a diet. The quick fix of a diet will get you short-term weight loss, but in the long term, you will probably regain it and then some. With intuitive eating, it's kind of the opposite. It's kind of, well, not for everybody. Everyone's experience is different, but for me, I was underweight because I was severely restricting. So I gained weight initially when I was intuitive eating because I was introducing all the foods that I had been restricting, and naturally the weight went up. And then for my personal experience, it kind of plateaued and flattened out, and I ended up in my weight set range. But it goes up, it goes down. It's trying to find where genetically you are supposed to be, and that's different for everybody. So you kind of have to just be along for the ride and kind of trust the whole process from beginning to end.
I completely agree with that. And working with a practitioner, I think, is especially important in this process, because it's how do we be okay with those fluctuations of, maybe a lot of people do gain weight initially and then arrive at their set point like you did. And so, but how can we, like you said, decouple our weight from our worth and be like mentally okay regardless of what happens? But I think there are a lot of benefits to fueling your body properly, finally, like recovering from that nutritional, the deficit that was inherent in your dieting days. A lot of my clients report to me that they feel so much stronger. They have so much more energy, and their workouts are so much more effective. And they're like, who knew that all I needed to do was like actually eat carbs? They're like, right?
It's insane. And yeah, for sure. I do want to, because, oh my God, our time already, this is killing me. I do want to get to the fitness component, because you're so well versed in the fitness side of things. Like, you have like all these certifications. I'm like so impressed. You know, and not many intuitive eating counselors are. I just want to say that, like, you are kind of a unicorn in that way. Of you have the intuitive eating portion, but you are also really well versed in fitness and exercise. Can you tell me one of the biggest misconceptions that you hear around the fitness and health, or fitness and weight loss industries? Like, what is the big thing you wish people knew?
That's a good question. Yeah, I worked in the fitness industry for a long time, so I've had a long time to think about this. I think one of the biggest misconceptions is, like, a lot of times trainers, like personal trainers and fitness pros, will offer meal plans, which that's like sort of a different conversation of like, is that within their scope of practice? Like, a lot of times I don't think it is. But people who are going to those trainers will follow those meal plans because the trainer has a body that they want. And so it's kind of just like, if you eat the way I eat, or if you eat the way I say to eat, like, you can look like me. Bodies don't work that way. If we all ate, even if we all ate and exercised in the same exact way, we would still always have body diversity. There's always going to be fat people and thin people and everywhere in between. So the fitness industry right now, at least, is very much like, if you just eat less and move more, then your weight is entirely within your control, and you can be thin and you can drop the fat. And that's just simply not necessarily true for everybody. And the second thing I would add on it is, the diet, or the fitness industry right now, is like so intense, and they make you feel like if you are not doing the high intensity interval training and working out for like a minimum of an hour a day and breaking a sweat and getting your heart rate up, then it doesn't count. And it's like, that I think that's what keeps people stuck in this all or nothing mentality, and maybe keeps people stuck from even starting moving their bodies in the first place, is because they think that it has to be extreme. But what I wish the fitness industry was promoting more now is just like, hey, all movement, like gentler types of movement, can be great for you. Rest is also important. So it doesn't have to be as intense as the fitness industry is making it seem right now.
Yeah, no, for sure. I work out like 30 minutes a day. Like, I can't tell you the last time I A, stepped into a gym, or B, worked out for an hour.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm the healthiest I've ever been. It's not, and you don't have to sweat. You don't have to breathe really hard. It's whatever you want to do. And I agree. I think what shies people away from consistent movement and exercise is the time commitment that they think that they need to put into it, and that they're being forced to do only a certain, group of types of exercise.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you can move your body in so many creative ways, and it doesn't have to feel like a chore.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what do you say? Because going back to the food, I'm sure a lot of clients come to you and they say, I think about food all day long.
Mhm.
What do you say to them? Or what is a strategy that they can take away?
I I say I hear this a lot, so I want them to know that that's common, like they're not alone. While it might be common, it's not normal. And like life shouldn't be that way and it doesn't have to be that way. And thinking about food all day long is most often a hunger symptom. It's your body saying like we actually need food. It's not that you're like addicted to it. Because by and large, Alana, with intuitive eating, like when you are eating enough consistently, you're able to eat and just like move on with the rest of your day. And you're not really thinking about food too much unless like you're actually hungry, or maybe there's something special, a special snack or meal that you're looking forward to. But by and large, we're not consumed with thoughts about food all day long. So that's something I tell them too, is like it doesn't have to be this way. And it's possible for everyone to be able to live a life that doesn't revolve around food and their bodies. So yeah, primarily that's an indicator that you're just not getting enough. And there's likely some restrictive like diet mentality thoughts and beliefs that we need to work through to make it possible for you to not be obsessing over food.
Absolutely. And, a lot of my followers have issues with emotional eating. So what's a practical strategy that they could take away to combat that?
Mine too. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Emotional eating is often, like other disordered eating patterns, it's often just a response to the restrictive mentality around food, so physical or mental restriction. So I would say make sure that you're eating enough and eating foods that you enjoy, and see if the emotional eating just kind of goes by the wayside naturally once you're doing those things. A lot of times people who are identifying as quote unquote emotional eaters, they might not actually be eating emotionally. It could just be they're having a lot of emotions surrounding the eating experience, but it might not be necessarily the emotion that's driving them to eat. But even if it is the emotion that's driving them to eat, the emotion could be like deprivation or anxiety that's caused in the first place by a lack of food or by the dieting that they're engaging in. So once
Right,
you
right,
start
right.
doing that, like you kind of just stop seeing instances of emotional eating just as a byproduct of getting your needs met.
Okay, great. Yeah. I feel like this episode is like the troubleshooting episode where we talk about like all the things, like our most popular things that our clients are telling us. Like, I always emotionally, I always think about food. And that brings me to my next one is, and this is, I feel like these go hand in hand somehow. A lot of my clients, and I'm sure your clients too, I'm addicted to carbs. I'm addicted to sugar. I'm addicted to food. What do we say to those people?
I get why you feel that way. And you probably really do feel addicted. Like it probably does feel like an addiction. Chances are that you're not actually addicted. It just feels that way because of the restriction. Restriction is like the number one culprit to all, like most of these issues surrounding food. It's just, goes back to restriction. The less carbs you eat, the more your body is going to crave them, again, because it's like this is something that we need. Carbs are the body's primary and preferred source of energy. Yeah. And sugar too. It's just your body's trying to get energy, and once you are getting what you need, you will stop feeling addicted to sugar and carbs.
Right, right. And that whole idea of habituation, it's like what you resist persists. If you don't consistently add those foods in, they're always going to be special. So they're always going to be that forbidden fruit, and they're always going to be the thing that you're thinking about. If I tell you to not think about a red puppy dog right now, that's literally exactly what just popped up in your head.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, habituation is a phenomenal strategy. I mean, for those listening, that this stuff we're going into right now is complex too. And it's okay. That's what I want the listeners to hear, is it's okay if this doesn't land right away, or if you have questions. Like, yeah, I get it. This is a lot. I mean, these are layered issues too. And everyone's relationship with food is unique. And so I think like, yeah, that's why I'm a big, advocate for getting professional support.
Yeah, you need it. And especially like in that beginning phase of intuitive eating where you might gain a little bit of weight because you are introducing the foods that you were formerly restricting, you need a coach or somebody who's going to get on a call with you, and you're going to tell them about that, and they're going to be able to tell you it's okay and it's normal and you don't need to run back to the diet because this is part of the process.
Yeah, totally. That can be so comforting for somebody to hear when they're in that panic phase of like, hey, this is temporary and you're going to be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to, and I can't believe it's already 11. I don't know how that happened.
I know, I could talk to you all day.
I know. So it's so, it's so nice to just, and that's another part of having like a coach or a group is that like, it's other people who get it. And I don't know about you. I know your best friend kind of understands intuitive eating, but I feel like I have nobody in my personal life who understands what I do. And it's like, I have my group and I have you who like get it.
I know. Well, that's why I'm like, my clients are like my tribe. I'm like, you guys are my people. Like, I need you just as much as you need me here.
Yeah.
Because, like, I love jamming out about this stuff.
Me too. Me too. I like to end, because this podcast is called the Finally Free Podcast. I like to ask, what does it mean to be finally free for you?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah. I mean, diet culture is a system of oppression. And when you view it that way, you realize, oh, wow, I was participating in this system that was oppressing me. I was oppressing others, like inadvertently, surely. But I mean, thinking about food all day long and being obsessed over tracking your macros, counting your points, counting your calories, that is a prison. To not be doing that anymore can only be described as freedom. And to be able to, like, for me, it's about self-actualization, being able to live up to my potential. You cannot do that when you're chronically hungry and deprived and tired and cranky because you're not getting enough food. So yeah, finally free for me is just like not having to live a life that revolves around food and my body.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. What a great idea to end on, this idea of chasing the self-actualization and our full potential.
Yeah.
Great. So if you want to really quick tell, and I'm going to put this in the show notes and I'm going to say it in the outro, but tell everybody where they can find you so they can hear it over and over again and go find you.
Oh, thank you. Probably the best place right now is my Instagram at just my first and last name at Maria Scrimenti. And I'm always teaching on there. And you can apply for one-on-one coaching there. I also have a free private Facebook group called Make Peace with Food. And that's a wonderful community for us to just hang out and have conversations like this. And I try to make that as accessible as possible. And then my website, mariascrimenti.com. Those are probably the primary places right now. Thank you for asking.
Awesome. Of course. Yes. And then we'll all be in the show notes. So you guys can just click right on that and find Maria and get some one-on-one coaching. Cause I don't offer one-on-one coaching. I only offer groups. So if you are someone who needs like private stuff, go to Maria.
Thank you. Wonderful.
And we're going to be talking once we build up a little bit more, we're going to be talking about retreats. So
yeah, we're going to do
it ready. Maria, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I had so much fun.
Talk to you soon.
All right, great.